taken a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Nissan Kicks. This is for the 2025 plus model, so I haven't been able to get into one of the previous gen versions yet, but if I'm able to and you want to walk through on that screen, if it's available, you'll find it down in the description of this video. But let's dive in and I'll show you everything that you need to know about this screen. So starting off, you've got some icons along the top left-hand side. Well, I should say the far left-hand side. So the top one is going to be a notifications icon. So if there are any notifications available, it would let you know. If there were multiple, you could just delete all or hit the settings icon there in order to get notifications for different things. There's a home icon there as well, which is going to bring you into this basic home screen. And you've got the flexibility to be able to add in and customize to create some unique widgets, which is kind of useful. So if you wanted to add certain things in, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. From there, there's a hot button press in order to get to your media, your phone as well, if there was a phone connected, and then you've also got your climate control settings. Down the middle here, you do have the option of adjusting a few different things out. So you can toggle on your heated first row seats if you had them available, adjust your climate this way, rear defroster, front defroster, and things like that, along with your fan speed and toggling on or off. It's set through the infotainment system. You have a few other things that are available. So you can have it go to your windshield, face, feet, some sort of Frankenstein combination of the above. You can toggle on your seats as well too. So those heated first row seats, adjust your climate this way, air circulation's there, and then you could have it going to windshield, face, feet this way instead. So you've got a few different ways that you can adjust this out. You can toggle it off, hit the settings icon in order to get into some additional climate settings. Honestly, these ones, I would just recommend keeping it at the default here. There's no point in changing. The icons that are here are also locked into place, so there's no readjusting them or organizing them. They're locked into place there. So let's dive into the screen and I'll show you everything that you need to know. The first thing is we've got our radio here. In radio, you've got a mix of AM, FM, SiriusXM. If you had a USB stick with MP3s, that would be available. If your phone was hooked up over Bluetooth, that would also show up as well. You can hit this in order to collapse or show the different sources that are available. And then AM, FM are going to give you the same basic look. Along the bottom, all of your presets are a mix of AM, FM, and SiriusXM. If you wanted to be able to save in a preset, all you have to do is tune to whatever station. You can do that a few ways. You can hit the FM list to see which stations are available. So if you're new to an area, you can refresh it. If radio text was available, this information here, that would show up. You can tune to stations this way. You could type in order to change out to the different stations this way. You can also use the voice command prompt in order to be able to change out stations that way instead.
Voice recognition.
Honestly, my favorite way of changing stations is just the voice command prompt until you have a series of different stations available. But in order to save a preset, all you're going to do, push and hold. You heard that little chime. That's going to overwrite from there. So straightforward. And then I mentioned tuning stations out. If you hit the settings icon along the very top, you can also manage your presets. So you've got all of the different presets that have been added in. So if you wanted to, you could select all if you wanted to delete them. Deselect, and then if you wanted to delete certain ones, you want to delete this guy, that guy, delete, and you can see there, we've now got some empty stations that are available. Moving back, you can adjust out some audio settings, which I'll show you as we dive deeper into the additional settings. And then SiriusXM gives you a few other options available too, so you can still browse for different channels. So if you're a big SiriusXM listener, you've got that available as an option. You can tune to stations this way. And then if you've got a song or an artist that's playing and you love them, you can hit this. And then if the either song or artist comes on, when you're listening to SiriusXM or technically on any other screen, if it's available on SiriusXM, you'll get a notification giving you a heads up that that song is now playing. You can see what related songs are available here as well. So it's straightforward using media inside of the ride. And on the steering wheel, you've got a volume rocker there, so you can adjust your volume this way. You can also change between all of your different presets this way, so you can kind of go left and right. You'll see it adjusting out through the infotainment system and through the cluster. If you do a little push and hold, that's going to act as a seek button instead. So push and hold as a seek versus a light push is going to change you out to your different presets. And then down the center there, you've also got your volume rocker. You can turn audio off, or you can also seek out to different stations that way instead. Next up is going to be adding in a phone. Start off on the iPhone side of things, and we're just going to tap Add Device, and waiting a second here for my Kicks to show up. There we go. Pin numbers match up, so let's go ahead and pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm saying no to that one. And you're set to go. Now, from here, you are set. So you can just make phone calls. You can also stream audio this way, but you've also got the option for Apple CarPlay. So Apple CarPlay is wireless inside of this ride. It is backwards compatible, so you could use a USB Type-C cable as well if you wanted to, but you've got wireless support, which is amazing. And you can see here, we've got the CarPlay icon that's popped up, so you can push that in order to get back into CarPlay. And you've got your current time, battery, and connection level, which map was open last, your audio application, and then miscellaneous application. From here, you can go to a little icon view, or to your home screen, I should say, into an icon view, and there are a bunch of different apps available. Now, this screen is kind of locked into place. So you've got your map that was previously used, your basic search options there, and then your media. If you've got a calendar notification coming up today, that would show up. If there were no calendar notifications today, the search box and then your media box would essentially be fuller screen instead. But you've got podcasts that are available inside of the ride. Hoopla is a library app, Live One's a radio app, YouTube Music is available there. And through this screen, you don't have the option of watching video, so it's strictly going to be audio inside of the ride. You can kind of customize the layout here too. I'll show you that in a second, but going through settings, you can also change out the appearance if you wanted to change out the wallpaper. So if you wanted something a little bit darker, more to suit your style, that is available. Hitting this icon gets you back to this screen. Then you do have Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze inside of the ride, but the downside to Apple CarPlay is there's no pinch to zoom capabilities. You could hit this in order to zoom in or out if you'd like to. I'm personally a big fan of using Waze because as you start to move around, if there are speed traps, red light cameras, things like that, people are pretty good at marking these types of things off, construction, slowdowns, etc. And then you can mark things off yourself. So if you notice a speed trap, if you notice that there are hazards on the road, things like that, you can give other drivers a heads up. But Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze all work extremely well inside of this ride. Like I said, just no pinch to zoom capabilities. When you've hooked your phone up on the steering wheel, so you've got your voice command prompt, if you do a short button push, that's going to be a button.
Voice recognition.
Yeah, that's going to be a button in order to get to your vehicle assistant, so the screen assistant. But if you take that same button and if you do a longer push and hold instead, that is going to activate your Siri assistant. So short button push is going to be the factory assistant, long button push is going to be your Siri assistant instead. Then you do have the option of adjusting the layout of these icons. So what you're going to do on your phone, you're going to go into your settings, general, and then CarPlay. You're just going to find your vehicle. You can forget it and customize it, and this is where we want to go. But if you can't even get to this step, like let's say if Apple CarPlay is not working at all, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how you can fix CarPlay issues. But what we're going to do here, let's say if you wanted your podcast along the very top and you wanted to have your map along the very top, you can adjust these out. Anything with a minus next to it, you can remove it from the screen, and it fully deletes it from the screen. But it saves it along the very bottom. So you could add the icons back in. But let's say if you played around with the layout too much, you don't like what you've done, along the top right-hand side of your phone, there's a reset button. So you're gonna go reset, reset, and that's just gonna bring you back to the default icon layout there instead. Back on the home screen, you could jump back into your phone this way, back out. You're also going to go back home into connections, and the connections brings us back up to this screen. So Apple CarPlay, you've got the device that's been added in there. We've got our Bluetooth available here as well. So Apple CarPlay is available, or you could disconnect from CarPlay if you just wanted to make phone calls. So you could do phone calls and streaming audio through CarPlay, but it's going to be a matter of preference here. Once you're connected back over, hitting the icon view there is going to give you a few other options. So you could activate or deactivate Bluetooth audio, Apple CarPlay, other startup options as well, or you can delete the device. So you could either be hooked up to Apple CarPlay or either of these two settings as well. So straightforward, but that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Nissan Kicks. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on your connection screen here, all you're going to do, back to the home screen, hitting connections, and just add a new device. So let's go ahead and hit OK there. And we're just waiting for my Kicks to show up again. There we go. And you're just going to connect through. PIN numbers match up, so let's go ahead and hit OK there. And you can see there, asking me the same thing. Do I want to allow access to my contacts and messages? I'm going to say no to that one just because this is not my car. And let's go ahead and start wireless Android Auto. You can use a USB Type-C cable if you wanted to connect that way instead, but we are now fully connected. So you've got your map application there. You can hit this in order to go to this little icon view instead. So if you prefer the icon setup, that's available to get into different options. You've got your map here. If you tap the map, that's going to bring you into full screen. And one thing that I love about the Android Auto side of things is that it's full pinch to zoom capabilities. You can search for addresses easily, change up your heading views and things like that. Pushing this gets you back to this little split screen. You've got your assistant that you can activate that way, or a long button push and hold on the steering wheel button in order to get to the assistant that way instead. You've got a series of other apps that are available, along with your connection level, your battery level, and then the current time. Now, on the icon view here, if you've got Waze installed on your Android device, but it's not showing up, check down in the description of this video. I put together a little walkthrough explaining how you can get Waze and other apps into Android devices. But you can also adjust this out the same way we saw on the iPhone side to a degree. So on your Android, you're going to search for Android Auto, go into Android Auto settings, and that's going to give you options here. You're looking for customize launcher. And customizing the launcher, it's the same idea. So if you wanted different apps to be moved around, you'd have the flexibility to do it. Anything with a check mark next to it, you could remove it from the screen as well, but it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side. So if you want these changes to come into effect, you just have to go to the home screen, go to your connections, you're going to disconnect from Android Auto, you're going to reconnect to Android Auto. There we go, hopping back in. Let's wait for that to fully load, and icon view. And the changes that we've made here have now come into effect. So it's not dynamic the same way, but you still have the flexibility of adjusting this out if you'd like to. Hopping back home now, if you jump back into your connections, you've got both phones that have been connected. You can set one of them as a favorite as well. So if you've got two phones connected, it's who's going to try to connect to first. You can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both. But one of the nice things is that you can connect to either or as well if you'd like. So if you wanted to have one phone connected for phone calls, one phone connected for media, so you can kind of do like a little bit of a mix and match here instead if you want to. It's kind of going wonky here as I move around, but you've got that flexibility. So you could either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can kind of do a mix and match of these other options instead. If you hit the little icon view now, you can kind of change these around if you'd like, or hit delete and yes. And that's going to delete the phone from the vehicle, and let's do that on the Android as well. Info, delete, and yes. And a few seconds in, and we are set to go. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Nissan Kicks. And back home from here, you've got your current time along the outside there, so you can show whether or not you want that clock showing up or not, yay or nay. Do you prefer the military time instead, so 12 versus 24-hour mode? How do you want your date format to be set up? And then you can also set your clock manually. So if you want to, you can adjust the day, month, year this way instead. And back, next up, we've got basic, more info, notifications, system info. There's nothing overly exciting in this screen. Connections brings us back to that same connection screen that we saw. And then there are user profiles. One of the big benefits of setting up individual profiles is that if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you can have it remember all of your presets, the phone that you've connected and things like that, even your key fob. So you can easily edit out, save different users in here as well. If you're the only person driving, you can just leave it there, but straightforward. And back, we've got our radio here again, which we've already seen. And swiping across into our last screen. And then if we go into our settings along the top right-hand side, that gives us a boatload of different options. Starting off again with our connection options. So Android Auto, Apple CarPlay if your phone is connected, or USB if you had a USB stick hooked up there. If your phone is connected, that would show up. You could adjust some sounds and beeps. So sound settings, you can adjust your treble, mid-range, and bass. So bass is cranked quite a little bit, so I'd probably drop that a little. Treble is up pretty high, so a few points there. So in this car, I've personally found that the bass up a bit, treble up a tiny little bit, gives good audio. But what I actually recommend here is play one of your favorite songs. And while the song is playing, adjust these out until it sounds perfect for your ears instead. And then you've also got your speed sensitive volumes and beeps, so you can adjust out your audio this way as you go up. That'll adjust it this way. Do you want your ringtone to be at a different volume? If you had your phone hooked up, you could also adjust your phone volume there. And then beeps. Do you want that, yay or nay? Listen to this. Do you want that? I think it's a little tacky, so I would turn that one off myself. System voice. So you've got that voice command prompt that's on the steering wheel. So you've got your
voice recognition
voice prompt there. So if you have the initial prompt, listen to this.
Say a command. Canceling voice recognition.
I'd recommend keeping that one turned off and then make sure that short prompts are turned on as instead. It's essentially an advanced mode when you do it this way. You can have it be either a male or a female voice. You can change how fast they're speaking and a few other things. You can also say, hello, Nissan. And that's going to bring up your voice assistant instead that way. So you've got a few different ways that you can get into your voice assistant. And from here, you've got clock, which we've already seen the different clock settings that are available. You can customize your menu, so your home screen there. If you wanted to adjust these things out, you could delete because there were a few things that were duplicated. You can exit out. You can, I should say, hit the X button there in order to be able to remove those. And then you can customize your sources that are along the very bottom there. So you can see all of your different audio sources. So if you have a tendency to maybe listen to Apple CarPlay instead, you're never going to listen to your Bluetooth. You could just do a drag. Actually, I'll show you here. So just drag and let's replace USB. So you can drag in order to replace any of these options here. So when we're on the media screen here in our sources, that's going to be the layout of these different icons. So you can kind of adjust it out like a TV a little bit. And from here into, I guess, general settings. From here, you could toggle the display off if you'd like to. And then you could also push. There we go. And from here, you could also change out your language. Do you want to be in either English, French, or Spanish? You can change out your units here as well. So do you want to be in either Celsius or Fahrenheit? And that's actually going to change up what's going on inside of the cluster screen. So you can see that change happening right there. And then obviously if you're in your climate screen there, you can see the changes that you make that way instead. Your keyboard type, and then you could just do a default. So bring everything back to the default settings instead. Your camera options for display. So you can adjust the brightness, the contrast levels, black levels, and things like that. But as we look at our rear view camera display or the around view monitor as available. So you can kind of see that, adjust things out if you want to. So again, making things brighter, darker, changing the black levels or contrast. I personally find just leaving it as the default is good enough for me. Climate settings, we've seen a few of these ones, and just make sure you leave it at the default. There's nothing exciting there. You can edit your existing user profile again, which we've seen, and then just some basic more information. So nothing overly exciting there. It does say all settings, but yeah, we're already in the all settings, okay. But that's the basics of using the screen. And then just underneath the screen, you've got a series of other options. So you've got your four-way blinkers that are available there. You can change between songs or stations. There's a volume rocker here. You could also toggle your audio on or off this way. There's a camera button there, so you could bring up your camera, pressing it a few different times in order to get into different views, which is kind of useful. So if you just want one view or the other, you've got your side-mounted camera view there instead, into your backup camera. Nice. And then you've got all of your climate control settings along the very bottom. And if for whatever reason, let's say the screen's giving you problems, so Android Auto, Apple CarPlay aren't working, it's just bugging out and it's not working properly, you can easily do a screen reboot as well. So all you're going to do is push and hold the volume button in for about 5 to 10 seconds or so. So just keep on holding, and then eventually, there we go. You can see there, so there was a little click, and what it's done, you can see there's nothing on the screen anymore. We're running into this little reboot cycle. So what it's doing is it's essentially deleting the cache. It's the same thing as if you were to restart your phone if it's giving you problems. So it takes a few seconds there, and it's essentially going to reload everything. So if the screen's going slow, like I said, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, or your phone connection's not working properly, you've got the flexibility of easily being able to do a soft reboot instead of doing a factory reset instead. So I know that's a lot of information, but that's everything you need to know about the infotainment system inside of the Nissan Kicks.